the table.
Now it's, I know, we'll see the table and some of y'all, there we go. It's not going to work. Here, Nathan, film away. Not yourself. The whole time. All right. So what we're going to do today, guys, is have a Paideia seminar like we did in the fall. So how those work is, first things first, you're making sure that you're not having side conversations with each other. You're having one big giant conversation, okay? I wish we had more class time. We don't have a ton. So what we're going to do is start really fast, and I want you to just go around and what section in the reading stood out to you. It could have been something you highlighted, or it could be your answer to, I don't have the questions on this one. This one. It could be your answer to that first or second question. So what stood out to you? What point here was most important? Just share that out, and then I'm going to ask the question to you guys. We're going to talk about it. One thing I want to highlight, too, is that this is about the life and presidency of Teddy Roosevelt. This was written before his presidency. And I want to highlight how important and impressive his life is. He was born with asthma, but he decided he's not going to go through life as a weak dude. So he said, screw that, and went on to live like an insane life. He became the youngest president at 42. Then he joined a volunteer army that he led in the battle, not once but twice, and led them like literally on the front lines in the battle. He also earned the Nobel Peace Prize, so he's like a warrior that earned the Nobel Peace Prize for ending a war between Japan and Russia. So he kind of did a whole lot of crazy things, and it's hilarious that all of that he also has a teddy bear named after him, like a cute cuddly teddy bear. That's where it came from. And the story goes that there was a bear chained up to a tree that they had caught for him to shoot because he was on a hunting trip, and he said, I'm not shooting that sad poor old bear that's chained to a tree, release it and set it free. But then the bear was sickly and old, so he ended up having to put it down anyway because it was sick. But he didn't want to kill the bear, so somebody got a hold of that story, and then they started selling bears because he was the president at Macy's, and then somebody called him Teddy Bears because he was Teddy Roosevelt. So that's where the teddy bear came from too. Kind of ridiculous. All right, so let's go around and share out what section of this, just small, tiny little thing, is important to you. And I'll start so we're all on the same page. Mine is from the very front page, and it says, it's in the middle of that big paragraph, nothing worth gaining is ever gained without effort. It's okay if it's the same.
But let me reiterate that in being virtuous, he must not become ineffective, and that he must not excuse himself for shirking his duties by any false plea that he cannot do his duties and retain his self-respect. This is nonsense. He can, and when he urges such a plea, it is a mark of mere laziness and self-indulgence.
I do wish that more of our good citizens would go into politics, and would do it with the same spirit with, oh my God, I'm dying, with which their fathers went into the federal armies.
One seemingly very necessary caution to utter is that a man who goes into politics should not expect to reform everything right off with a jump.
Moreover, the very need of denouncing evil makes it all the more wicked to weaken the effect of such denunciations by denouncing also the good.
Let him make up his mind and do his duty in politics without regard to holding office at all, and let him know that often the men in this country who have done the best work for our public life have not been the men in office.
No man can be a good citizen who is not a good husband and a good father, who is not honest in his dealings with other men and women.
I do not think that any man should let himself regard his political career as a means of livelihood or as his sole occupation, for if he does, he immediately becomes most seriously handicapped.
Begin with a little thing and do not expect to accomplish anything without an effort.
A man who wishes to do his duty as a citizen in our country must be imbued through and through with the spirit of Americanism.
In a free republic, the ideal citizen must be one willing and able to take arms for the defense of the flag, exactly as the ideal citizen must be the father of many healthy children.
It is a bad sign for the country to see one class of our citizens sneer at practical politicans and another at Sunday school politics.
There are occasions when it may be the highest duty of any man to act outside of parties and against the one with which he has himself been hitherto identified, and there may be many more occasions when his highest duty is to sacrifice some of his own cherished opinions for the sake of the success of the party which he on the whole believes to be right.
The first duty of an American citizen, then, is that he shall work in politics. His second duty is that he shall do that work in a political or practical manner. And his third is that it shall be done in accord with the highest principles of honor and justice. Sorry.
Was that yours, Nathan?
Yes. Mine is, a race must be strong and vigorous. It must be a race of good fighters and good breeders, else its wisdom will come to naught and its virtue be ineffective.
Cool. All right. So, obviously, the point of the speech we can kind of figure out, but here's what I want you to answer the first question. We'll start with some basic ones and then get to some stuff that relates to today. Why did he write it? What was he trying to say?
Well, people should have a hand in politics.
I don't want you to just give me I'll talk about it. Why was he trying to? What was his purpose in writing this thing? Why did he want to write this?
I mean, he was just kind of putting the model out there for the good American citizen and promoting involvement in politics, I guess.
Just nobody could be a politician. You needed to be a good man, and that you shouldn't just rely on politics yourself.
Just trying to prevent corruption.
Give everyone a voice instead of just having politicians.
It's hard to write and do this at the same time. Let me tell you. Keep talking.
I guess if even everyday people had some knowledge of politics, that more things would happen in the government. It wouldn't just be just government officials controlling everything. The people would have a say to it.
Okay. Let me go back to something you guys were asking about. You're talking about what it means to be a citizen, all that stuff. Well, he wrote this speech, and he gave this speech in 1883 when he was running for governor, I believe. So, look back at, you guys just looked at his life and his presidency. What about his presidency showed that, okay, the things he did in here actually truly believed?
He strongly promoted conservation and created the National Forest Service.
And he sued the Northern Security something because they were creating a monopoly over the Northwestern railroads. And so he didn't want monopolies, so that just one person could control everything. He wanted everybody to have a part in it.
I think he's not. I just lost it. What was your question? Your question was.
He's talking about. He wrote this before he got elected president.
Why did he believe?
Yeah. What now? What shows you now, since you've researched his life, that he believed what he was talking about?
I think he backed up what he said because he wasn't just making up his rules behind a desk all the time. He was out there and he was, active outside, and so he was able to see, hey, the forest is getting cut down. Maybe we should do something. And he was out there involved with the people instead of just,
He wasn't relying on other people to do his work for him.
I think everything he wrote reflected in his presidency.
Yeah, a lot of presidents just say they're going to do something, and when they get in office they don't do anything, but he actually did stuff.
Okay, so with that, let's bring it back to the modern day. Okay, if this speech was given yesterday, how do you think that people would respond to it? Would this be something that the world would, or that America would be like, yeah, we're doing that? Or what's your view on, are we following through with what Roosevelt said? Why not? Talk about it.
Well, he talks about conservation and stuff like that, but we are going through with conservation somewhat. But talking about presidents carrying through on their word, Obama hasn't done absolutely anything since he come in office.
The only thing he changed was his model.
Exactly.
I think when he's talking about politicians shouldn't make their political career a means of livelihood or their sole occupation, because if they do that, they're seriously handicapped, and it really sways your judgment on things when that's all you do. And now, we have politicians who do nothing but work their whole life in the Senate or whatever.
And they're billionaires.
Yeah, and like politicians aren't exactly what Theodore thought is a good man, because like a lot of them knew about having affairs and like all that crazy crap. And it's just like, you don't really think that's a good man.
They're more concerned with the fame, being elected.
We thought that people in office should be the perfect American citizen.
They should be for the people and not for themselves.
And nowadays, as you look at it and notice that people who are in politics are only in politics, you realize that your average citizen isn't really involved in the political world like Teddy wanted it to be.
And he was talking about the whole, like, don't just go by the political party, and that's what so many people do, like, oh, he's a Democrat, he's got to be good, and, like, they just go so much off of that instead of actually learning the facts about him.
He also said that there were no complete lines in what is and is not a political party, and today that's so untrue. Political parties as a whole tend to believe exactly the same thing on most issues nowadays compared to then when it was somewhat a variant.
It still holds true when he was talking about how the greater changes of our world were done by people that weren't in office. And I still kind of think that's what happens.
That was a really good point. That he's talking about the biggest changes are done by people who aren't in office. We're talking about this whole progressive era, right? And all these reforms and changes were made by people who were not in political office to start, and then the politicians got behind it. How does that relate to your world? You just said it yourself. So talk to that. I mean, our big sweeping changes, does it start with the people or does it start with the politics?
I think, like, with the whole, like, the climate change and everything, the green people or whatever were, like, making it more, like, out there and a big deal, and the government wasn't wanting to until, like, they started making it a big deal, so they, like, pushed the government into, like, I guess, changing it and trying to help it, and so they, like, pushed more of the conservation laws that we have.
And especially with now where it is the whole, like, they're more concerned with getting votes. Whenever the people get upset about something, that's when they get involved, because that's going to get them attention.
I think it ultimately starts with the people, because the people have to elect the person into office in the first place.
The same thing also holds true to the whole gun restriction laws that are going through state senates and all that right now.
I think the people that aren't in office are the ones that really want to make the difference the most, because they don't really have anything to lose. And the people that are in office have, like, their fame or their title and, like, their big paycheck to lose. So they're kind of doing what the government is telling them to do so that they can keep their check.
And if you noticed, political candidates change their opinions so often based on what the current opinion on said issue is, depending on, who's in office and who's supporting them.
They're just people pleasers. They don't do what they really believe they do, what people want them to do.
Cool.
Which, if you're going to run for a political office, you need to do what you believe in, and that's going to benefit the people instead of what everybody wants you to do.
And, like, they start out with their beliefs and like, I think that's why a lot of them get into politics, is because they firmly believe something. But, like, in this, it was talking about how, like, they need to have good morals and they need to stick to them. Well, that's where they go wrong, is whenever they stop sticking with them.
Cool. So y'all were talking about earlier that you don't think today's society is following what he said. But now you're saying that the only reason that politicians are doing anything is because the people are getting involved. So, which one is it?
People are pushing them.
I don't think people are getting physically involved so much as their ideas are stemming what people in political offices should run for. Like, there's no concrete involvement of people that aren't in political office.
Okay, so here's the very last question, then we'll head out. Roosevelt was huge into conservation, right? We talked about that already. He set up a ton of conservation efforts. He started the United States Forestry Service to set up these places that are going to be set apart and special. So, thinking about his life and his presidency for conservation and talking about this whole, he was doing the biofuel stuff, are we doing enough? And here's the biggest question. Is the conservation issue even something that the public sector should be worrying about, or is it just a private concern? Is it something that we as a public should care about, or is it just private?
It should be public, because I mean, we all live here, and if we just keep destroying the environment, then we're not gonna leave anything for generations after us.
This is the only planet we have. I mean, we can't sustain life anywhere else, and if we destroy where we are, there's nothing else we can do. We just end as a species.
If we don't push to like keep them making changes, and there's not going to be anything to like make them want to change it. So like they're just not going to do anything because nobody's telling them that they have to do it.
So, what do y'all think it takes to affect real and permanent change?
It takes somebody who's extremely dedicated to their cause, and a lot of the times people who are willing to die for it.
You have to probably have more than one person so that we actually make a difference.
When I wrote down the question, I had put like strong movements of the people and shootings, massacres, and deaths, and when like our crap catches up to us, like our debt and stuff, when it finally hits us what we've been doing, that sparks a change.
Being able to alter the minds of others.
I think we're going to stop on that. When our crap catches up to us. I like that. When our crap catches up to us, we'll be paying for it. Cool. Good job, guys. You can stop.